Dawn breaks. It's early morning in Eritrea, but the serenity is broken by shadows of blood and tears. For almost 30 years, the Eritreans have been fighting for the right to an independent state. Their struggle, fought in a forgotten land, has been going on for longer than any other war in Africa. Officially, Eritrea is part of Ethiopia, but the Ethiopian army has been driven out of most of Eritrea and now holds only a few towns. Rocky valleys and mountains up to 3,000 meters high provide an impregnable fortress for the Eritrean People's Liberation Front, the EPLF. It is an isolated society, forced to live by night. Every bush, every rock might hide human life. From its earliest history, Eritrea has fallen prey to the marauding instincts of one foreign power after another. 1890, Eritrea is proclaimed an Italian colony. 1941, Great Britain takes over the administration. 1952, the UN federates Eritrea to Ethiopia. 1962, Ethiopia annexes Eritrea, giving it access to the Red Sea. The United Nations has never protested. The only way into the parts of Eritrea under rebel control is to cross unofficially from the Sudanese side of the border, timing arrival to reach Eritrea under the cover of darkness. Air raids are a constant danger. Even though Eritrea does not yet officially exist as a country, Eritrean border guards control all arrivals. Welcome to liberated Eritrea. Behind the checkpoint lies war. Some 40,000 Eritrean fighters, both Christians and Muslims, are engaged in a mixture of conventional and guerrilla warfare. Hundreds of thousands of civilians and fighters have been killed, wounded or captured in the course of this interminable war. Lately, the Eritreans have pushed the front line forward, overrunning Ethiopian positions. Converting the frontline battalions into highly mobile units, they also operate behind the enemy lines. For a demoralized Ethiopian army, the war begins to feel futile. Morning comes quietly to the fighters. Generation has followed generation at the battle line. Tesfaye Abraham has fought with this unit for the last 8 years. Tesfaye and his comrades fought in the military campaign that captured the Red Sea port of Massawa in February 1990. Now, this unit is Tesfaye's family and he has few personal possessions. A kushek, like this one, serves as a sheet during the night and as clothing during the day. Many have not seen their real families for many years. They are in the towns still occupied by the Ethiopian army or have been forced to flee abroad as refugees. Men and women, commanders and foot soldiers alike, share the same food, sleep on the same hard ground, and do the same chores, whether it's aiming heavy artillery or taking turns to cook. Each unit is responsible for a farm where sorghum is grown to make the daily bread taita, eaten with a sauce of beans and lentils. Tesfai's gun was captured from the Ethiopian army. This is the way EPLF gets its arms and ammunition. While the Ethiopian army has received regular arms supplies, first from the United States, later the Soviet Union, and now from Israel. The Eritreans have not always been so successful. There have been periods of terrible defeats and times when they fought among themselves. During the 1970s, a bitter civil war took place between the EPLF and another movement, the Eritrean Liberation Front, the ELF. Now, the EPLF is the only military force in the field. Before the call to battle, some EPLF members were peasants. Some were factory workers, others were students or teachers, often involved in underground opposition in the towns. There is no mistaking that today they're a highly effective and single-minded fighting force. As in every war, each fighter has his own cross to bear. Tesfai carries the bitter memory of a terrible tragedy that befell his own family. Tesfai was at home when the Ethiopian soldiers suddenly knocked down the door. First, they looted the house. Then, they shot and wounded him. He then saw the brutal killing of his parents and 3 sisters.
بقدامنا حجتها مجمرات تتكوست نعيا أب تجاميت إجري أب ناي معتفيت بركة قدامنا ساريماتني كابي حليفها نتي أولعة أب إجرها ريماتها حليفة بس تخصي زي سمعت كأني تا نعباي حتى يزودي مالتي كفتي تحبيات الزنبرت وتي عملتها تأدخلها الأولى هم بدحري أسعبة أتيهنا مستمر بعد الزنبر نحد شو دشتو خوينا تبرت كمان نويح برت M14 عينة برت نيرو خلاص بنا يدرك تخصيب مجموع مسردو بمولهم تقابيص مالتي جنة جن أيت أثلت من تريفة أو خلا تحقف نايديكو في لحلا أمج الرشا أنا تهريم بتحنت جزات تجي عند رأخهم كلهم بسانجاي متي وانا نتا نجنت كأطلع الله بسانجا متي حجي كجرفا دهوني أطلع دهون زبل ترتر ناقور كله أب هيوتي متي تكس جيرو الجيبو ناب ما عنده كس جيرو تجيبه حجي بزخت تجع الله كلهم جيرو عندنا سحيبه كيك أثلا أو خلو تنكف في الوقت راح تمنيس حجي بتاز تنكف أنا يتخرى بدأ 5 جيرها حقيقة دحر عندنا خلا يجزي تطويله كلا يجزي ونعكينه مليس عكينه أما هالكبلا الجيبه صوت مسبلة عندنا ونفلت إلى 5 جرح بحق كيوتات جينا خي وقع كله مالي الجيب شعو الجيب عبد شعو هلو صايتو حدي قاتا سنجا ما M14 سنجا عند الزهون تخيلوا أو وش تخبل أتي نتاولا أو خلا دبل دمس ترح جيرا أو خلا نلعل تطويلات تميلة دحر نتي سنجا وتقول له خير كله دم تر ناله خيدو كافت الزراعي نعي وترو زي مالتي
The war has forced many to leave their homes. Tesfai's uncle, Fesahaya, is on his way to Sulamuna camp, near the border with the Sudan, to see his wife, Meret. Meret Walder Selassie is from Asmara, the capital of Eritrea. But, as a refugee within her own country, she has had to adapt to life in the rugged northern mountains. There, she has built a new home among 8,000 other displaced people, mainly women and children. The war has broken up innumerable families. Families often have to live apart. One of Meret's sons is away at school. 2 others are at the front line. Meret's husband, Fesahaya, works as a carpenter some days' walk away. He comes home every other month, so today she has slaughtered one of her few hens to welcome him. Chicken, however, is a luxury. Usually it's nothing more than bread with a sauce and some tea. Like everybody else in Solomuna refugee camp, Meret is dependent upon the food supplies which the Eritrean Relief Association distributes once a month. The food, together with medicine and clothing and other basic necessities, is trucked in across the border from the Sudan. And, more recently, food has been allowed in through the Red Sea port of Massawa. However, many international relief agencies have been reluctant to give and reluctant to publicize what they give to people living under the control of the Liberation Front. As more areas come under the administration of the EPLF, the stability of everyday life increases. In the refugee camp, a small cooperative has been opened. Trade with passing merchants has made it possible for the cooperative to stock luxury items like coffee beans, tea, and tomato paste. Meret can buy here when relatives abroad send her money. As a result of the war, thousands of children are orphaned or lost. Many do not know whether their parents are alive or dead. Water is scarce. It must be trucked from far away as the rains have failed yet again. Meret herself lost a child in the war and her first husband.
أنا أنت رأيني أتي هلو كنتات نايتي مجزأتي أتقال سينا يدكاي ناي سوتنا ترديون وتم أنت قد هاجر من أنت تجسع مالتي أنا جنا أزمري رزنجر زي مساعته أسماء أخل كتمة بريرة نفسي يدكاي نمعكاب أبزواج جنبار دقي كدحنن كمهرن كعبن متيه اعبي خا نعدومي قالوا سلا انا خاي سنكت وقاتي لعل عقمي يبركت بمبال ينبر انا زفطط له اليه يبلي بزحت متقمان يبلي
In the shadow of war, agriculture continues as it has for centuries. But most farmers have to cope with mines and bombs, as well as the calamities of nature. In areas which used to be self-sufficient, there is now a constant struggle to produce enough food to survive. Still, the Eritreans manage to keep the rudiments of life going. People still trade. Some transport local goods. Others bring basic necessities across the battle line from Ethiopia, from the Sudan, or across the Red Sea from Saudi Arabia. Both Sudanese pounds and Ethiopian birr are used. There is always a bargain to be made, a deal to be haggled over, and a sense of economic vitality that the war has not managed to diminish. A quarter of the population are pastoralists. Their way of life is threatened by war and drought. They are especially vulnerable to air attacks. Only rarely is it safe to move by daylight. Ten-year-old Amna made the mistake of running when the fighter aircraft came.
These children, when they take their herds to the mountains and they step on mines and they get either amputation, one leg or both legs, depending on the type of mine they step on, because there are different types of mines. What we encounter on the mountainsides, of course, are the types for to maim or injure humans. And among them we have also quite a lot of mines that are meant to give minimum damage. And the funny thing about it is, or the paradox about it, I should say, is that they don't kill you. They just make you a permanent victim.
The many casualties are taken care of in well-camouflaged hospitals, sometimes built underground.
It is built in such a way that if bombs fall nearby, that they would stand the pressure or the blast and protect the patients. So we have such buildings under trees and the side of the mountains, and we make them as much as possible, you know, more or less similar to the surrounding area.
Doctors and medical staff have developed the skill of working in primitive conditions.
Hey. This patient came from the front line, and he has a napalm burn. He's a teacher, and he was teaching some of the fighters in the front line, in the trench. And a plane suddenly appeared and
The scars are many. Only when Eritrea gains peace will the extent of the physical and psychological wounds of the 3-decade-old war really be known. Meanwhile, an extensive educational program continues. The focus on education is only part of the social revolution taking place both in the base area and at the front line. All age groups participate in vocational training and literacy programs. Tesfai's wife, Mebrat, teaches in one of the many hidden schools in the valleys. But one of the most important things children learn is how to distinguish between a fighter aircraft and a passenger plane. In addition to being a fighter, Tesfai is a teacher who educates his comrades.
نتم سعيهم زموتو كتزرزر كلها نعبنت تبل زعوا حدا نقر هجي أملك كا تريني ترملك.
Communal life and work helps Tesfai cope with the pains of his past.
قدم تي بدحرتي نايتي جزانا مقتلتي كبكي ولا أحمق خناسات وتاودي أنيره كمون نبصورة قاعد وقت أي قدفن النيرو ولا نايمش إن عينت نبصورة وقت إيجن لك أكمتم ترر تستقعد تخينه.
These mountains provide natural cover for the Eritrean political and administrative centers and small-scale industries. When dusk falls, daily work commences in the factories. Generators provide electricity to the printing presses producing textbooks and magazines. The machines have been given by solidarity groups and voluntary agencies abroad to help Eritrea become self-reliant. This machine, which provides sanitary towels, is a gift from women's groups in Europe. Many of the workers are wounded in the war. Rehabilitated, they now work here as volunteers. Plastic sandals worn by everybody are collected and returned to the factory once they are worn out. There, they are cut into pieces and reconstituted into new black sandals. This video produces educational and political programs to the fighters. During the past year, the Eritrean army advanced close to Asmara, the capital. At last, an end to the war is in sight. The Eritreans say they must have the right to determine their own future. Only when this is recognized by the international community will Eritrea's 30 years of solitude finally be over.